Hi there, my name is Ilya, aka the Effortless Academic. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is digital note taking. We could also call it how to never forget great ideas with digital notes. So let's get right into it, and I will introduce the whole rationale and myself as we go along. As we all know, scientific information has been exploding recently. So there is a statistic showing that every 9 years, the volume of publications basically doubles. So this is an exponential growth. Now we have AI to help us not only with doing research, but also with writing that research, reading that research, and this will actually only exacerbate the problem. However, I think that the problem itself is not so much the volume of information, because we also have tighter and tighter niches. It's more about how we consume that information. So the way I see it is that there is a bigger and bigger body of information that we may consume. A lot of that falls away because we're just too lazy to capture it. It's something very interesting and then it kind of goes out of the head. But for some stuff, we take notes and we don't want to forget this stuff. But sometimes we don't even remember that we have a specific note. And so when we work with the notes that we do remember, an even smaller portion makes it into your working memory. And there is where synthesis starts to happen, where you start having ideas, where you basically start really refining that knowledge. And so here also we forget certain things because we're just, not always at the top of our game. And then from that part comes the diamond, these research ideas. So the way I see it is that this consumed information, the mountain gets bigger and bigger, especially with AI coming into the picture, and the diamonds get smaller and smaller because they also are only relevant to a certain small subset of scientists. And so today we're going to look at two problems and how to make this information mining process better and easier for us as academics. So the first problem is, and I ran into it myself, is that I just can't remember what I learned, or I just can't find my notes. So these are my actual notes on ecology, on machine learning, and many other things. So pen and paper is really natural. We've been doing it for thousands of years, literally. But you must remember that you read something in order to even be able to look it up. So the same thing happens even if you use Google Docs or Word files, because you can only search within a note, or maybe you can search the title of a note, but it's still very difficult to find something specific. So digital notes that are a network of knowledge is something where we can start solving that problem, where we're not so much limited by the capacity of the brain, but where everything can be stored. And you can imagine that a database stored somewhere in the cloud can contain as much information as is available, terabytes, far, far, far beyond what we have in the mind. So the question is then, how do we get this academic knowledge that we take notes on into a digital format that allows us to search and to find these ideas? That's exactly what this presentation is about. And I'm going to show you in a little bit more detail what this problem of synthesizing information looks like. So let's assume we have three different topics. One is on global warming, one is on the ice age, and the other one is on rising sea levels. So they're all somehow related to climate change. When I took the note on global warming, I wrote kind of to my future self, so that even though everything is warming, there was also something called the ice age. So it was really colder. So temperature kind of goes up and down, and there might be like some sort of contradiction because one is cold, one is hot. Yeah, just very being like not very scientific here. But what I'm trying to say is that whenever I take the note on global warming and I make a link to the note, the ice age, when I'm going to read up on global warming, ice age will come up and I will use those two concepts. But then there's also the third note that is not connected at all. Yeah, so that is just only there if I remember to do it. Also, when I read the note on ice age, global warming might not be coming up as a concept. And so for synthesis, you need to keep A, B, and C, all of them in your mind. And if you don't manage to do it, you can't really write a nice literature review. And so that is the question. How do we create these connections? And how do we create a system that allows us to discover these connections? And as it turns out, you can have digital tools that can help you, for example, with this first problem, that when we read the Ice Age node, that we actually have a link, a backlink to global warming. And AI in our nodes, or used with our nodes, can help us discover the connection from the rising sea levels to the ice age and to the global warming, because they're semantically somehow similar. Usually something on global warming will contain ideas about sea level rise, and AI can pick this up even if we don't have that connection. But all of that requires, again, everything to be stored inside one vault of knowledge. That is what digital note-taking is about. And you might immediately ask yourself then, how do I organize that vault of knowledge so I can leverage my own brain, I can use AI and so on? And if you have ever asked this question to yourself, ever tried, dabbled in digital note-taking, you probably stumbled upon this guy, Niklas Luhmann. So Niklas Luhmann had a solution that he made up in the 1950s. So it's a complete pen and paper system, absolutely nothing digital. And he was prolific. He wrote 70 books, 400 papers, and developed this very famous Zettelkasten system, or Zettelkasten, how you pronounce it in German, generating, 300,000 citations to this date. Of course, a lot of them post-mortem. And here's a quote from him. I'm not thinking everything by myself. This predominantly happens in the slip box. And the slip box takes up more time than writing books. And that is, for me, really interesting, because it looks like he was not kind of doing science, he was just taking notes. And these notes, because of his system, allowed him to publish at an absolutely mind-boggling speed. And so I was personally obsessed with Niklas Luhmann, because this is kind of the king of efficiency, if you want. And if he managed to do that in the 50s, like, what would he be able to achieve with modern digital tools? So the way that his slipbox worked is that he had these cards, and these cards had links. So the links were just basically numbers. So each card had a number, and then you could put the number of another card that would be basically linking to that part. And each card also contained ideas on one very, very narrow, small topic. So that is also important. Each node was narrow, and it was linked to many, many other nodes, creating this type of hierarchies. So right now there is a website where you can look up even how his nodes looked. So that's where all these images are from, and you can really navigate everything. It's absolutely amazing. And so that brings us to my own personal story. How did I get into this note-taking? Why am I telling you this, right? Like, who am I even? So I started a PhD very late in my life for PhD purposes. So at 36, I was just thinking, that could be a good path. I tried everything else. And I also know that fitter or younger person are usually much, much faster in their minds, they're faster in their brains and so on. My father would always say, yeah, all the main discoveries in academia were basically made by 20-year-olds, because he was a physicist. And the people that write formulas, they probably write them faster in their 20s than in their late 30s. And I was thinking, like, what could be the leverage for me to be better than the people that are kind of younger and better equipped? And that's what led me to note-taking, to thinking about, like, how can I leverage the things that I've been using my whole life? So I was a CEO of a startup, and then, I did a lot of web development and design and systems thinking stuff as well. And so that led me to an internship in molecular biology, where I was just researching how cells relate to stress. And I decided, okay, I want to study this. I want to do this as a PhD. I applied to all these different universities. We published a paper after 6 months of this internship. And then finally, I got in. And my supervisor or friend back then, he basically wrote me this recommendation letter that got me into the universities. And what he wrote is that he can spar with me at the same level as his senior graduate students, which was incredibly kind of him to say, because I don't think it was like super entirely true. But yes, I was actually able to learn the things quicker. And I felt, I had a grip on this very, very complex topic of molecular biology. And I attribute this entirely to the note-taking skills. So how do actually academics organize information? There are many ways how to do it. There's the second brain idea by Tiago Forte, the lit kit from Nick Milo, and there's Luhmann's Zettelkasten that I just presented to you. And I found that none of that really matched like what was able to be done today and like what academics also needed. So the stuff that's out there that's digital is kind of not really academic. The academic stuff is not really digital. Like there has to be something in between. And so I started experimenting. And that led me to create the first version of my effortless academic note-taking system that I'm going to present to you in the next couple minutes. So if you want to get started on this, go to effortlessacademic.com/academic quick start guide, and you will receive step-by-step instructions on how to get started with this note-taking system. But I will also present it to you right now, but I only have about 10-15 minutes left, so it's going to be a short presentation. So let's dive right into it. The tool that I'm going to use is called Obsidian, and it is a tool that is incredibly flexible, and it is local because all your files are stored locally. It has thousands of plugins that allow you to do whatever you want. It can integrate with AI, and it's just a wonderful tool, but it has a slight learning curve. I personally tried all these apps down here, and none of them really stuck to me. So there's definitely something to learn, but it is really, really worth it. So Obsidian creates an easy to access network of knowledge. So you can take notes and you can make links. That's the absolute basis of Obsidian. And these are exactly the links that Niklas Luhmann made with his index cards, and that essentially enabled him to make this wonderful Zettelkasten system. So it's already in here. But on top of that, we get things like global search of all your notes. We get things like PDF previews, annotations, diagrams, like whatever, images, like you can integrate anything you want. So it's just like Wikipedia running locally on your machine that you create over years and years. So my vault currently has about 500,000 words in academic notes and hundreds of papers and books and so on, everything in one big system. So that's what I want to do. And let's think about the basis of how to organize all that. And the basis for me is to think, how do we eliminate repetition? Because the way that information in academia is presented is we have a paper, it contains ideas A, B, C, D, and so on. And then we read another paper, basically in the same domain. It also contains new ideas, but some ideas are repeated. And the more down the line, the more we progress here from left to the right, the less novel ideas will actually be presented, to the point where we actually know everything that's there. And then they made a small experiment and, okay, well, cool, you found that, or you even just validated something we already knew. So it becomes less and less important to take notes on the papers, and more important to understand what are these topics that they are talking about. And that is the core thing, is that we can leverage redundancy through topic and source notes. So in my system, I have a very simple structure, 3 types of notes: source notes, topic notes, argument notes. So the topic notes track what you learned, the source notes track where you learned it. In a very, very simple way. And we're gonna first see what topic notes are and then dive into source notes later, because really the core idea is, if you take one thing away from this presentation, is to break down everything you read into topics rather than taking summaries of papers and books and lectures. So an example of a topic note, very simple, is you have biodiversity. It's a concept, right? It's a topic. And you have forest resiliency. And then inside these notes, I can maybe break it down. So biodiversity in ecology is measured as alpha diversity, beta diversity, gamma diversity, and they all have, subsections within them. And the same goes for forest resiliency. I can also link them together. So for me, a paper is essentially a collection of little puzzle pieces, which are these topics. And whenever I write on a topic, I link back to the source note, to the source where I found that information, because I need also a way to anchor my knowledge in something that already exists. So I need to cite it, I need to reference it. That's one thing that most academic systems basically don't do, or most note-taking systems that are out there don't do, because nobody requires that rigor that academia has with citing and referencing. And over time, as you break down your papers from this sequential structure that's easy to transmit, but really, really hard to understand into a network structure that's much easier to access but hard to transmit. I can't just send you my entire Obsidian vault. You wouldn't be even able to use it because it's not kind of merged with your brain. And a network structure is essentially this linked structure that I've shown you. And why do we do this? So what is the big benefit of having that network structure? And for me, it's that I can harvest my nodes. And that is what essentially is referred to as synthesis of information. So concepts 1 and 2 here, for example, are not mentioned in the papers A and B. But if I start, let's say at this node, I will stumble, oh, paper A is linked, so I read paper A, but also concept 1 is linked. So I go to concept 1, read on this, concept 1 brings me to 2, and so on. And so I kind of travel around in my notes. And what I do is essentially I find a path, how whatever is written in A is connected to B, how 1 is connected to 2, how A and B essentially also contain information on 1 and 2 without being directly connected to it. So that's real synthesis, that's real power there to find new ideas and research gaps and make it kind of easy and enjoyable for yourself. So this is the summary of a topic note. A topic note breaks down a paper into a series of ideas, and they are very short usually. If they get too big, like this note over here, then we have to break them up into separate notes. That's completely fine. One thing that I always tell people is to ensure that you have at least 3 links going from every node, because that ensures that you kind of have a knowledge network. You have always a fork in the road and you know where to go next. And make sure that everything that you put in your topic notes is somehow linked to a source node, right? Because a source node is essential to remember that you didn't make up this fact. You read it somewhere, you should write it down where you read it. So when you use that piece of information, you can attribute the person that wrote that piece of information. Or if you misunderstood that piece of information and took a wrong note, you can go back to the source and reread it. That's the beauty of it. So that brings us to source notes. So how do we keep track of sources? And here is a little definition of plagiarism from Harvard. It's the act of intentionally or unintentionally submitted your work as written by someone else. And that unintentionally, that's the kicker here. Because that's the thing that you have to remember, that you, even if you just write something somebody else wrote verbatim, you're plagiating them. And you don't want to do this by using source notes. So a source note for me is essentially just a digital note, but it contains specific information. I usually name it, for example, like I would write a paper. So FI 2017 is the first author and the first year and the year of publication. I add some text to make it easier to find. I have some properties like the title, the DOI to go to find, for example, supplementary materials. I link the PDF, I link the DOI, I write a summary about it, sometimes even the intention of what the author wanted with this paper. And I write sometimes key results and also link to the PDF where I found these results. It's important that, I don't really take notes on the paper. All the essential information from the paper is stored in the topic notes. This is just an anchor for my mind and kind of just to catch up on what was in this paper, to have like an easier way to remember things. So the benefits of this are obviously preventing plagiarism, preventing also mistakes so you can look things up, allowing to look up details and discover new connections. And also with a little bit of data wizardry in Obsidian, you can create a whole bibliography. So in the note-taking course, in this short sequence that I advertised to you a couple of slides ago, I will show you basically how to create all these things step by step and have a few, like a little bit more time and space to really go into the details of all of that. So let me summarize everything that we have talked so far about in the note-taking system. So we have 3 types of notes. We talked about the source notes and we talked about the topic notes. I would say 80% of your notes are just topic notes. That's where the meat of your note-taking body resides. The source notes are, they're pointers and they hold it together, but they're kind of the outer shell. They are not the thing itself. And then there are argument notes that we unfortunately don't really have time to go into in depth, but it's something that I use in order to synthesize my finding. So a typical argument note, for example, could be a question. Yes, so I'm reading about these three topics, and now I'm thinking about, how does this relate to that? That relate to that? Did these people maybe made a mistake in their analysis of this? And so that becomes kind of an argument. And that's what I try to write here as an example. So source nodes contain ideas on different colors, topic nodes maybe sort them by shape, and an argument node create some form of reasoning. So some form of synthesis. And so these three types of nodes is essentially what enables me to create this very vast and densely connected network of information that I can navigate and harvest to synthesize my information into novel ideas and novel literature reviews and so on. Obsidian is the perfect tool to do that, even though there's plenty of alternatives, and people can get very heated about what type of tool you use. But I always say that a good craftsman never blames their tools, meaning that if you know how to use Obsidian, you'll be good with this. If you know how to use Notion, you'll be good with that. And it has a little bit pros and cons, but these are all trade-offs. Obsidian is probably more private, it's probably faster. Notion is very good in synchronization, and it's like very kind of interactive and has better AI integration. Rome has this kind of crazy node network where everything is a node. You don't really think about single files of nodes, but you think more, in pieces of information. Tana is an incredibly complicated tool. So there's just no end to how you want to structure it. So don't think about the tool so much. And then lastly, a few kind of takeaways for how to do it. And that's one, for topic nodes, always connect to at least 3 other existing nodes. Maximize the links, not the length of the nodes. And especially don't put a lot of information into your source nodes. Always break it down into topics, because this allows you to leverage that redundancy that is naturally present in scientific or academic information. PDF highlights for your writing. That's something that I think I will show you because we have a few more minutes left in this presentation. And lastly, keep your notes atomic. So let me show you a few things, how that can actually look. So this is Obsidian, and that is a note in my vault on niche tracking. It's just a concept in ecology, so I'm an ecologist by trade. And you see, basically, it's just text. It's not super interesting. But what you will notice here, for example, are these blue links. Blue links are always source links. So I set up Obsidian this way to show me source links. So if I click on that, I will be guided to the paper that looks pretty much like what you've just seen in your in the presentation. And it will have a few things. It will have a few images, like that's a theory that has been proposed, and I can go back. But I can also have these yellow links. And if I hold Command key and hover, it gives me the exact part of the PDF that I highlighted. So it's a quote from that paper. And if I hold Command, I can also navigate without kind of going into the node, but just by having this little pop-up. And if I hold Command again on the title, I get to the PDF. So you see, it's incredibly fast how I can navigate in my vault. Same happens if I go, for example, to this fitness node, and then to the paper of this person, and boom, I'm right in the middle of the PDF. So it can't be any more convenient to go, and I can even write in this little pop out. So there's also a possibility to include images. There's a possibility to make it graphical, to also link specific annotations inside the PDF. So you see how after I hovered that yellow link, it brought me to the PDF, to the exact location where I can really double check, is that really true? I can add kind of comments that look a little bit grayish here. And there's endless possibilities with Obsidian. So if I just open this graph view to show you like all the nodes that are present in my vault, this might look something like that. And whenever I go into any of these nodes, you will see that it's just text, text, text with lots and lots of these blue links indicating papers that I've read. So everything in my node has kind of a link to a paper. So I always know where certain information is coming from. And that's just the beginning, because that's where we store information. But how do we organize information? So Obsidian is also absolutely great for organizing information. If I go, for example, to my tip research project, I can build these graphical user interfaces that are that are built from my notes and that are somehow related to steps in my project that I have to take. I can show you, for example, also all the plots that I've been using, and I can kind of zoom in and like really structure the information that I'm using within Obsidian. So basically what I'm saying is that all the stuff that you know is contained in Obsidian, all the stuff that you do is contained in Obsidian, and essentially also the stuff that you're going to write. So the papers can also be contained in Obsidian. And so you form that network of knowledge that allows you to bring everything you know into one location and leverage these kind of scale effects that happen with that. And that is the most important part about the note taking, is also to be patient, to build that knowledge slowly, step by step, and not to kind of be caught up in other things. And I've been doing this for about 3 years now, and building on the system, refining the system. And every once in a while, I have webinars where people can look into it. So you'll find all of that on effortlessacademic.com. So my 3 main courses are the note-taking course. So that is basically what you just heard, but expanded into about 8 or 9 hours. So we go really into detail how Obsidian works, what we have to do to create this sustainable note-taking system. And trust me, sustainable and note-taking systems is actually a big word, because whenever you start and you realize you messed up your structure, you want to tear it all down and start from scratch, and you will never do it. You will always lose information. So it's very important to set a good structure in place at the beginning. Then there's also the writing part of papers, which more and more will be dominated by AI. And I have developed a set of tools and kind of workflows, how you can leverage different tools and essentially a lot of ChatGPT to write your papers. There's a little list of tools that we're using, if you can see that here. And you can combine them to create a very smooth workflow that helps you, especially if you're a junior academic and you're not very apt at writing papers. It can be very scary and very slow. So AI and a lot of other things like your notes can help you with that. And then the other spectrum of this is literature reviews, where you have to find the right papers to read. And that also is something that you can create very cool workflows with. You know, there's very, very good tools that help you identify the right papers, help you prioritize, help you extract that information that then goes into the note-taking, which then results in really good papers. So basically from left to right, that's my workflow. And if you want more ideas, just go to effortlessacademic.com and check it out. And I really hope that you gain some benefits from this presentation, that you can see that there are different other ways of how we can take notes. And to my surprise, I never really found anything online that would tell me how to do it, even though it's something that every single academic has to do every single day, is work with knowledge. So the only thing that is fair to ask is like, how do we manage that knowledge? And that's why I founded effortlessacademic.com, to share with others. And so now there have been thousands and thousands of people in my webinars and courses. We have an online community where people exchange these ideas. And so I hope that you will also one day join the Effortless Academic family. And just talk to me and leave a note in the comments. So I hope to hear from you. Bye-bye.